皆さん、まもなく22時になりますが、もう少し押す、見込みでございます。またお時間と、見えてまいりましたらアナウンスさせていただきます。もう少々お待ちください。
そうです。アスリートの方が質問、外プレーの方が圧倒的に質問が多いので。じゃあ、ちょっと先にブルージーンズの方の音声の確認始めます。Hi. Hello there.
Hi, you okay?
Craig, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Perfect.
Is everybody okay? Great. Okay, so hi, Robert. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Good day.
Good day. So we can hear you clearly as well. Okay, and I'll have the interpreters speak on her phone mic to check whether the translation goes well. So.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so both of you, can you hear them?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think the blue jean settings is all good. So I think we'll now switch to the explanation of the press briefing. Yeah.
Thank you. Just let me know when we're ready to start, Masa.
Sorry, could you wait a little bit for? We will do a little bit of more adjustments. Okay, thank you.
Let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
会場内のムービーの皆様、そしてチーム配信の皆様向けに音声の確認させていただいております。こちらのマイク、中村 GDO のマイクでございます。音声いかがでしょうか？よろしいでしょうか？チーム配信の方もよろしいでしょうか？続きまして、こちら2本目のマイク、高谷スポークスパーソンのマイクでございます。会場内チーム配信よろしいでしょうか？ありがとうございます。続いてこちら3本目のマイクです。こちら、質問者の方のマイクになります。マイク1です。マイク1です。よろしいでしょうか？
Okay, so we basically finished the technical check, so we'll do some explanation of the press briefing, and then we'll start the briefing.
Okay, so Lausanne, we have a goal. Floor is yours, Robert.
Thank you very much, Masa. Thank you, Masa. Good day to you all. Good evening to all the colleagues in Japan, and thank you for staying up so late to be a part of this briefing. Apologise that it's starting so late, but obviously the agenda of the day was such that we couldn't start any earlier. I'm Robert Roxburgh, Head of Olympic Games Communications at the IOC, and I'm delighted to have with us today for this virtual press briefing of the launch of version 2 of the playbooks for the Olympic and Paralympic Games Tokyo 2020. In Lausanne, Switzerland, Christophe Dubi, the IOC's Olympic Games Executive Director, and Pierre Ducrey, the IOC's Olympic Games Operations Director. In Bonn, Germany, we have Craig Spence, the IPC's Chief Brand and Communications Officer. And as you can see in Tokyo, Japan, Hidemasa Nakamura, the Games Delivery Officer of the Tokyo 2020 Organising Committee, and my colleague Masa Takaya, spokesperson for Tokyo 2020. Without further ado, I'll hand the floor to Christophe Dubi to make some opening remarks. Christophe, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you present. You see, this is your guide to safe and successful games. This represents 60 pages of very hard work, and behind this there is a lot of determination. See, the playbooks have been developed with Tokyo 2020, the IOC and the IPC, but very importantly, they build on the tripartite work that you in Tokyo have done with the government of Japan and the Tokyo municipal government. And for this, you should be commended and thanks. For more than a year, we have an all partners task force, which has been helping all of us to deliver successful and, more importantly, safe games. And in there, as you know, we have WHO, we have a number of academic and independent experts. We have also independent public health organization. This is really a group that has helped us a lot. And although they are not necessarily on the call this afternoon, on the Visio this afternoon, they should be thanked as well. In February, we released the version 1 of the playbook. And the work in the meantime has been tremendous, and I will explain what comes afterwards because it's equally important. What has driven us for all this time is to make sure we can deliver games which are safe for Japan, for our hosts, making sure that anyone coming to the games have followed very strict protocols. And what you see in the playbook is the result of this work. We also want to make sure that the participants themselves are safe and they take it upon themselves to guarantee their own safety as well as the safety of others. We are encouraged by the vaccination and the efforts that are made by governments to fight against COVID around the world. We made clear from the very beginning that vaccination was not mandatory, including for athletes and officials. But as you know, the IOC and IPC, we have strongly recommended that while respecting the prioritization of the groups established with national guidelines in the countries, that if possible, athletes and officials would have access to vaccination. And I must say that we have very good response from all over the world, which indicates the importance that the games and the message that the government of Japan and the organizers are making all efforts to welcome the world. This is taken as an encouragement for many governments around the world to help the participants to the games, the delegations coming to Japan. So we are very encouraged by what is happening. The new version of the playbooks are based on the latest scientific data, public health expertise, and draw also on many lessons we've learned from other international sporting events. And sport has resumed basically on the calendar, would say from last summer, and since then a number of events, hundreds of events have been delivered, and they have not presented any risk for the local populations, and we haven't seen any of the event creating difficult situation in this respect. Now, version 2 of the playbook allows us, that is us at large, you in Japan and the rest of the Olympic movement who will come to Japan, to focus really on what we are on now, which is delivering the games. We are in operational mode. So everybody has to make a number of detailed plan at this point in time, and this playbook version 2 helps with the implementation. We exactly know what the countermeasures are, and they are really critical, and they will have to be abided by, and they will be abided by. But what is really important is that now everybody has got clarity of what has to be done in what, again, we are going through now, which is the final operation readiness. The playbooks, they build upon adapted operational plans. A number of dimensions of games delivery have been adapted to introduce the countermeasures. And here, Tokyo, congratulations to you. It's really hard to include all these countermeasures into the delivery of the big games functions. But they also, and that's very important, build upon what we have committed to do, which is to reduce the delegation sizes for everyone in the Olympic family. And here I must say that the efforts which have been done from everyone are producing very good results. Only those people essential for the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games will be in Tokyo. And obviously this is piggybacking on the decision that was made regarding foreign spectators. Only essential people will come to Tokyo. Now we still have a lot of work. We are in that operational stage where we have to go down to minute details. And version 2 only precedes version 3 from a few weeks. And what we have to do now is go one level down in capillarity from all the generic measures that we have, which are very detailed, but apply them to each and every sport, each and every discipline, that is each and every venue, and each and every areas within the venues. And this is what we have started to do with Tokyo 2020, and version 3 will be even greater than the 60 pages we have currently. These games, obviously for all of us, will be different, but they reflect the sign of the times. We are all participating in games which take place in a pandemic situation. Of course, there will be a number of restrictions, but speaking to all the groups within the Olympic movement, no one ever said this will be a problem. No one. Everybody is saying the more precise and the stricter, the better. For one reason, safety first, for Japanese people and for all participants. Now those guidance obviously are not static. As I said, they will continue to evolve until publication of version 3. And a few of the policies might evolve in a direction or another, considering the situation in Japan and around the globe. Now, finally, all eyes will be on Tokyo next summer. This will be something absolutely stunning. And if you read, and I know that they've been published only recently, but if you read into the detail, what we said we would all deliver, we will do. We are really walking the talk. And the same for the athletes. They are incredibly determined. They look forward to coming to Tokyo. You've seen many declarations of Olympians and Paralympians, and it's certainly a joy to look also at the results from the Japanese athletes, being in terms of qualifications, but also in international events results, and there many congratulations to some of these outstanding achievements. So eyes on Tokyo, athletes are ready, conditions are in place. We are truly very happy to have the opportunity to speak about the playbook version 2 today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christophe. I'll now give the floor to Pierre Ducrey. Pierre.
Yes, thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So the playbook version 2 is building on the strong foundations we established for the first version. They provide greater amount of details in view of allowing the stakeholders to plan better and to understand the environment they will have to work within this summer. The structure of the second version of the playbook is very consistent with the first version. We wanted that it's clear for people to be able to find the information. We also made it very clear in a document where new information is coming in for the ease of the reader. The structure is still based on 4, let's say, parts, which is before you travel, entering Japan, what you do once you are at the games, and leaving Japan. And this is basically following a number of principles that are established for all stakeholders. The second version of the playbook is including new information regarding social interaction, hygiene, testing, tracing, or isolation. We are releasing today, and it has been done, I think, a few minutes ago, the athlete and team officials playbook, but others will follow over the coming days so that every stakeholder can get the information he needs to progress the preparation. And each document will have a set of common principles and detailed information regarding the particularities of that stakeholders and how the COVID countermeasures are affecting their preparation. If we look at a bit more the content of the playbook on the basis of the structure I just mentioned, before you travel, it will be expected that you minimize the contact with others 2 weeks before departure, that you take within the last 96 hours 2 tests on 2 different days that will have to be certified in view of submission upon entrance to the country. You'll have to complete a written pledge, which is basically your acceptance of the conditions for the first 14 days in Japan, your activity plan, which will document the places you intend to go in the first 14 days, and you will also have to download the apps that will be part of our system once in Japan to trace and facilitate the work of the authorities should there be any concern. You also, of course, will have to prepare your documentation that will then have to be submitted when you enter the country. And this is the second part of the playbook. Upon arrival in Tokyo or in the city where you will have to conduct your activities, you will be tested once more. You'll have to activate all of the apps which are part of the approach for these games and submit your negative test results as well as all the documentation which is required. Once you enter the country and really enter into the games time, if you want, if we look at testing, for all participants, there will be a test over the first 3 days. For the athletes and team official, this daily rhythm will be pursued over the entire time of the games in principle. For other stakeholders, the rhythm of testing will be aligned with the proximity to the athletes or the nature of the role of the different stakeholders. You will find in the playbook drawings and documents which we call day in the life of, which is basically showing what the process of testing will be, what would happen in case of a positive or negative result, just trying to make it very easy for people to understand exactly the sequence of events that will happen around testing. We obviously will have physical distancing measures in place, 2 meters to the athletes, 1 meter to the other participants. This is consistent with what we said in the first playbook. Christophe mentioned it. We will have adapted venue operational plans, and we also revised the access to the different operational areas to make sure that only people that have an operational reason to be there will be entitled to access some of the specific parts of a venue or of an area. On transportation, I think we confirmed already that athletes and team officials will not be allowed to use public transportation. They will use dedicated games vehicles. For other stakeholders, they'll have to do the same for the first 14 days. And after that, they will be entitled to use public transport. There's a number of rules in this playbook, and you will have the opportunity to get familiar with it over the coming weeks. One important role, which is also detailed in more information in this playbook, is the role of CLO, which is the COVID liaison officer, which will really be, for each team coming to Tokyo, the person that will facilitate the contact with all the relevant parties, be it the organizing committee, the IOC, the IPC, the authorities on the Japanese side. Those individuals will also be the people that will have the responsibility to ensure their delegation is behaving according to the playbook, that their delegation know all that they have to know in time for their preparation. So a very important role that we will also spend time supporting by dedicated training for those individuals, making sure that they receive the information they have to circulate in time and the relevant training. So we are very thankful for all of the CLOs that will work with us, because they very much form part of our team in terms of making sure everybody know what they need to know at the right time. As Christophe mentioned, this information in this playbook is not static. We always wanted and will continue to do that to make sure our information is very relevant and adjusted to the latest developments. So we will continue to work with the experts, continue to work with the International Federation and all the relevant parties to update the documents in real time ahead of the next publication of the playbook, which will happen in June. The key is, however, that everyone is aware of the rules in this playbook and that they accept them, and most importantly, that they will implement them during the games. The collective responsibility is really the key to our success. And for those that will choose deliberately not to respect the rules, there could be impacts on their participation to the games. Overall, this playbook is providing, we feel, all the necessary tools for stakeholders to plan their journey ahead, and we will continue to provide more details as we move forward so that all stakeholders have the information they need to do so. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Pierre, for that detailed introduction. I'll now hand the floor to Craig Spence in Bonn.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying so late into the evening in Tokyo. With just over 80 days to go until the Tokyo Games, I think we're in a strong position to deliver safe and successful Olympic and Paralympic Games in what are challenging and evolving circumstances. Thanks to an immense team effort by IPC, IOC, Tokyo 2020, Government of Japan and TMG, we are publishing version 2 of the playbooks today. As with the first editions, special considerations for persons with disabilities are included in all playbooks, and I believe the stringent measures outlined will offer reassurance and comfort to all game stakeholders, as well as the people of Japan. We are taking every possible measure to deliver safe games, going as far as we can to ensure the safety of every single participant. The Tokyo Games will be like no other international sport event held in Japan, or around the world for that matter. With no overseas spectators and the movement of all stakeholders limited, these games will be unique, with every stakeholder fully understanding their own role and responsibility to ensure their own safety and the safety of others. During the games, stakeholders will be amongst the most tested people on earth when it comes to COVID-19. Should anyone test positive, they and their close contacts will be quickly isolated. In terms of sport, we are finalising plans with each international federation on how positive tests could impact competition, planning for multiple scenarios. The domestic and international sport competitions that have taken place in the last year in countries where case numbers are much higher than in Japan have proven that sport can continue if the correct principles are applied and followed. Clearly, the Olympic and Paralympic Games are much bigger and complex to organise, but by following the 4 principles of mask wearing, minimising physical interaction, test, trace and isolate, and hygiene, we have strong confidence in our plans. As Christophe mentioned, the delivery of these games is not dependent on vaccines. The focus is on countermeasures. However, the more people that are vaccinated in advance, the better it will be. Right now, we know at least 60% of all para-athletes participating in Tokyo 2020 will be vaccinated, with this number set to rise further in the coming weeks. This underlines the commitment and confidence in these games from governments around the world. The pandemic has been extremely challenging for everyone, with many of us having lost loved ones, friends or colleagues. At the IPC, a beautiful Japanese word, komorebi, has kept us focused and motivated. The word means when the sunlight shines through the trees. We truly believe these games are sunlight through the darkness. By bringing together thousands of athletes from all over the world, we will celebrate humanity, showcase the strength and diversity of the human spirit, and show that out of adversity must always come hope. Our athletes are beacons of hope. They have trained throughout the pandemic, back garden or track, spare bedroom or gym. Their resilience and determination has inspired us all. Athletes will head to Tokyo carrying their own personal hopes, as well as the hopes of their nations. But for the Paralympics, para-athletes also carry the hopes of the world's 1 billion persons with disabilities who have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. At a time when the UN 2030 agenda is all about leaving no one behind, COVID-19 has increased discrimination and left the world's 15% with a disability more marginalised than ever. That is why the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics are the most critical games in the history of the Paralympic movement. With billions watching around the globe, the outstanding performances of Paralympians will smash stereotypes and demonstrate why persons with disabilities need to be active, visible and contributing members of a global society now more than ever. Although we will not be physically close to each other at these games, there is power in us coming together and being connected. In a time of great uncertainty, I am certain this summer's sport will be magical, the impact on society monumental. Finally, a huge thank you to our Japanese partners, the Tokyo Organising Committee, Government in Japan and TMG for their continued dedication and commitment to delivering historic games. Our team at the IPC looks forward to seeing you in Tokyo this summer. Thank you. Robert, back to you.
Thank you, Craig. Now I'll pass the floor to Hide in Tokyo. Hide, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Christophe, Pierre, and Craig. I'm very happy and honored to explain about the version 2 playbook. 日本語で、はい、やらせていただきます。このですね、プレイブックは非常にですね、作成にあたってはいろいろな困難というかですね、多くの作業がありました。先ほどクリストフが言ったようにですね。で、実はこう涼しい顔で、皆さんみんな私も含めていますけれども、これ本当に完成したのは5者協議の最中と言っていいぐらいです。本当に最後にでしたのは。で、当然今日本のオプレスの方の前には仮役という形で、出させていただいてますけれども、まさに本当はこのきれいなブックの形でですね、日英お示ししたかったんですけれども、そういった形で日本語の方はちょっと違うワードのようなフォーマットで、やらせていただいています。ただこれだけ大きな情報量ですけれども、分かりやすくするためにパラパラ見ていただくと分かりますけれども、バージョン1から付け加わったところにはプラスの文字があります。で、日本語のバージョンの方には黒い星がついております。ここは大きなポイントですけれども、新たにバージョン1からハイライトをすべきところということですので、そういった分かりやすさにも配慮しているところでございます。で、やはり作るにあたって、変異株という動いている状況に対して対策をどう取るのか、まさに中身をここにいる IOC、IPC、そして、日本政府、東京都と議論しました。で、中身が変わったとしてもですね、それをどう表現するかということで、視点がやはり違うところがあるわけですね。そのルールを作る方はこういうことを守ってくださいっていう視点と、あとはユーザーからですね、ルールを守る側から視点とおのずと書き方が違ってきて、それをどう表現するのか。また日本語と英語、非常なギャップがあってですね、本当に一時はこの4月中に出すのが困難じゃないかと思った時期もありました。ただ、本当にここ1、2週間、毎日のように IOC、IPC、政府、国とクローズに議論をいたしまして、なんとか今日仕上げることができたことを非常に嬉しく思っています。で、やはりまた日本が緊急事態宣言という状況でありますけれども、だからといってですね、これを先延ばしすることではなくて、きちんと予定通り出すことが大会に向けての準備ということでは着実に進めていくという意味もあったと思いますし、きちんと多くの方々に説明をして、理解と納得を得ていくプロセスとして、予定通り出せて非常に良かったというふうに思っています。で、この中身は先ほどピエールさんがざっとアウトラインをご説明していただきましたし、今日はちょっと時間がなくてあまり細かなところまでご説明できないかもしれませんけれども、中身に加えて このプロセスを非常に大事にしていきたいと思っています。これはバージョン1の時にも申し上げましたけれども、コロナを乗り越えてやる大会ということで、そのオリンピック・パラリンピックの大会自体はこれまで通り非常に重要なんですけれども、作っていくプロセスというのがこれまでにないほど非常に社会化を社会の一部となっておりますし、非常に重要だというふうに思っています。単に7月23日に安全な大会できましたよということではなくて、我々がその世界の人々が同じように苦しんでいるコロナに対してですね、どうやって安全な環境を作っていくのか、どうやって安心していくのか、してもらうのかということを透明なトランスペアレントなプロセスで、またバージョン1を説明し、意見をいただいてバージョン2を作り、これをまた今日のような機会を通じて説明し、意見を聞き、またこれをゴールデンウィーク明けには各ステークホルダーとやって、また同じようなプロセスをして、バージョン3にやっていくという、こういうそのトランスペアレントでトゥーウェイのコミュニケーションをしながら大会を作っていく、これが非常に重要なことだと思っています。で先ほど最初に申し上げましたけれども、非常にこのバージョン2という作れたというところで、達成感があるのは事実ですけれども、逆にこれは全くのゴールではなくてですね、このバージョン2を出発にして残り3ヶ月、どのようにしてオリンピックとパラリンピックを安全安心にやるのか、ここからが正念場だと思っています。以上です。
Thank you very much, Hide, for those introductory remarks. I will now pass the floor to Masa to lead the question and answer. Masa, the floor is yours. Thank you.
はい、それでは皆様本当に遅い時間にありがとうございます。これからご質問をお受けしたいと思いますので、部屋の中の方は挙手をいただきたいと思います。オンラインの方も、お名前、ご所属、ご質問内容をご入力ください。それでは質問ある方、どうぞ。じゃあ最初、長谷川さんから。
共同の長谷川です。コンプライアンスと制裁のところについてちょっと見解をお伺いしたいんですけれども、このプレイブックに書いてある内容に違反したというようなケースの認定は誰が、行うんでしょうか。またですね、例えばあるチームだったり選手が別のチームや選手に違反行為があったと告発をするようなケースがあった場合、その運営側は調査をしたり、するというようなことはあるんでしょうか。お願いします。
Yeah, I think the question wants to be answered by the IOC team.
Let me start maybe with the end of the process, because I think this is something that we will see on very, very rare occasion. If something really dramatic happens, not respecting the playbook, we have a disciplinary commission, and there we're very clear. We'll take the appropriate measures proportionate to what has happened. But I go back to my initial comment. And I made it in the introduction. The playbooks, the way they are currently, they are extremely well received. And people want rules, want clarity in the rules, because it helps delivering what they are here to deliver. Athletes, media, Olympic family and others, international federations, national Olympic committees. So I think it will be very rare occasion. Now, we don't have at this point in time a very precise process, but what we know is that we have channels for information in all games operations, and we had in the past, we have them to date. An athlete, an official can report back to officials of an international federation, to someone in their delegation, or to their superior when it comes to the workforce in Tokyo 2020. We don't want to have all cases, because this would be speculation. People simply know that the rules have to be respected, and if there is a problem, the natural decision will be to inform the closest person that can help elevate and resolve the case. But again, the end of the process in hopefully no cases would be a disciplinary commission, and we would face our responsibility here.
はい、山下さんどうぞ。
自立新社山下です。よろしくお願いします。ちょっと仮役の12ページのスクリーニング検査っていうところをちょっと読んだんですけども、要するにその陽性2回連続で陽性になって初めて、出場できなくなるというふうにちょっと読んだんですけれども、そういった理解でよろしいのでしょうか。1回陽性になっても、再検査が、12時間内にあって、でさらに陽性だと陽性が確定するというふうに理解してよろしいんでしょうか。
ですね、これはまさに専門家がきちんと判定する話ですので、もう絶対これだけのルールということではありません。ただここに書いてありますのは、まずスクリーニング検査場合にはその唾液の抗原検査をまずやって、でその結果が不明確または陽性の場合には同じ唾液を使って今度は PCR 検査を行うということで、そのよりですね、偽陽性というようなものを防ごうということであります。一方でそのちょっと下に書いてありますその発熱がもうすでに症状があるものにつきましては、このスクリーニングとは別で鼻咽頭の PCR 検査を受けまして、でそこでもしその陽性になって、でそこにはもうポリクリニックですので医者がいますので、そこで診察をして、これは陽性というふうに当局の人が判断すればそれは隔離とか入院になります。したがってスクリーニングテストのプロセスと本当にもう熱が出てしまって、やるプロセスいきなりそのポリクリニックで診察を受けるのとはちょっと2つパターンがあります。でいずれにしても最終的には陽性になる前にはですね、その当局の医師の判断もありますし、あとはRAEG というですね、リザルト、アドバイザリーエキスパートグループというその検査の結果に対してそういう医師のグループがですね、グループを作りまして、そういう中できちんと判定していくという、そういうシステムを取っています。
Anything you want to add, Lausanne or Bong?
Yes, thank you, Masa. This is Pierre. Yeah, Hide's answer is very comprehensive. It's always been our absolute concern to make sure that any decisions regarding someone having to be isolated because of COVID needs to be based on the right level of checking. And indeed, there will be two tests based on the same sample of saliva. If those two are inconclusive or positive, then for the athletes and team officials, we would conduct a full nasal swab PCR just to confirm that those results are indeed correct. So Hide was right in terms of PCR being conducted when you have symptoms, but it's also applicable when the results of the first two saliva tests is inconclusive or positive. Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございます。膨大な数の質問が今オンラインに入ってますので、ちょっと次のやり取りまで質問を受け付けて、それで質問をオンラインは切ります。で、ちょっと全部答えられるかどうか分かりませんけれども、引き続きやっていきましょう。はい、じゃあ一番前の方どうぞ。
NHK の松山と申します。1点目はちょっと細かいところで恐縮なんですけど、公共交通機関のところで、英文見ると入国後14日間という、記載がありませんが、ここは、14日間というのはかかってくるのかと、先ほど説明でもちょっと14日以上滞在すれば公共交通機関使えるというような説明もありましたけども、ちょっとここの認識をお伺いしたいのが1点と、6月に、出される最終版、ここに向けて具体的にブラッシュアップしていくところ、すみません、ちょっと全部読み解けてないんですけども、ここについてはどのようなことを考えているかという2点をお伺いできればと思います。
ありがとうございます。第1点はですね、要するにこれはアスリートですので、基本的には14日間経ってもどっか行くっていうことではなくて、ずっと選手村から専用のバスで競技会場に行くということですので、交通手段に対しては14日間という区切りはですね、基本的にないと思っています。で、多分おっしゃったのは、その他大会関係者が14日間、海外から来た人が14日後からは公共交通機関使えるけれども、それまでは公共機関使えないという、そこのあれですので、そこは選手と他の大会関係者という違いとご理解いただければと思います。バージョン3はですね、確かバージョン1が30数ページで、これが60何ページですので、2倍になってですね、このままいくと120ページになっちゃうんですけれども、そこまではいかないんですけれども、やはりだいぶ細かくきちんと書かれてはおりますけれども、よりですね、手続きについて、具体化していかなきゃいけないと思ってますし、これは他のプレイブックにもかかるかもしれませんけど、例えばカテゴリーによって検査頻度が変わる場合には、じゃあどの人がここに当たるのかといったことをきちんと書いていかなきゃいけないというようなことで、より具体化と精緻化をしていきたいというふうに思っています。で、先ほどの繰り返しになりますけれども、そういう意味でもこういったですね、質問を受ける機会というのは非常に大事だと思っていまして、ステークホルダーも含めて、これを読んで分からないことを質問してくるわけで、その時点分かっていることはお答えしますけれども、なかなかその時点で検討できないことは、まさにバージョン3に向けてですね、整理して、そういうプロセスを経て完成版に持っていきたいと思っています。ありがとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。そちらのじゃあ男性の方。
Hi, this is Ryusei from the Japan Times. I'd like to ask a question of the IOC. It's two-part. One, can you explain to me the rationale for not requiring athletes to be vaccinated? And two, can you tell me whether the playbook includes or will include measures that extend 2 weeks beyond the end of the Olympic and Paralympic Games to account for the incubation period of the coronavirus? Thank you.
We'll take the first question, and Pierre, you take the second. So we made it clear that that vaccination from the very beginning would not be obligatory, and there are a couple of reasons I would like to give. But first, explain why it is so important that the playbook goes to very detailed measures when it comes to testing and screening. This is really from the very beginning the point we insisted upon. This is how you identify possible cases. This is how you stop any possible spread. And we have received here the best possible advices from many organizations to present to you today the regime that we will all be submitted to at Games time. Now, that being said, why no obligation for vaccination? First, not every country at this point in time would have the possibility to access vaccination. So there is a question of fairness here. And as you know, and as I said in the introduction, we are very much encouraging the governments and the NOCs to work hand in hand to allow for vaccination of delegations, starting with the athletes. But it's not possible everywhere. And sometimes the priorities, because of the situation in the country, are elsewhere, and we have to respect that. Second, it's the fact that although vaccination is very efficient, and we've seen some of the very good results of the vaccines that are now used in various countries, they do not offer 100% protection, and that we have to be very clear as well. And this is why those playbooks are so important, because although you would be vaccinated, you would still have to follow all the measures for these good reasons. So you see, we have determined that it wouldn't be obligatory, that it is an important measure for risk reduction, and that's why we are encouraging vaccination. But this explains why we have not made it obligatory. So I trust this was clear enough. Pierre, on the second question regarding extension of the playbook.
Yes, thank you, Christophe. So you will see in the playbook, first of all, that we are recommending that every participant minimize its time on site, so that we really focus only on those operational periods, and when your job or your participation is completed, that people do return home. The clear requirement is that everybody that will leave Japan will have to take a test and have a negative certificate. This is very much connected with the regulation that can be in place for the countries towards which they are traveling today. And this is really the element that we are recommending all of the participants to follow. They need to be very well aware, in collaboration with their team, their CLO, of the requirement, is it from the airline or from the destination country, when it comes to possible additional requirements for quarantining or testing. So this is something that we are recommending in the playbook. We also recommend in the playbook, as you may have seen, that up until the time you arrive at destination, you are submitted to the rules of the playbook, just to make sure that the protocols we have established are respected up until the time where the person is back home, and then under the responsibility of his home organization or home country government.
はい、じゃあ西村さんどうぞ。
ラジオフランス西村です。IOC の、方々に質問させていただきますので、英語で質問します。Thank you for today. I suppose that you're aware that a lot of Japanese people are against the Olympics this year in Tokyo, not only because of safety reasons, but also because some of them have the impression that Olympics participants will be privileged. I mean, for example, even now for general public in Japan, it's not easy to be tested if you don't have a clear COVID-19 symptom, or you have to pay near $300 to get a certified PCR test. Sorry. You also know that vaccination will not have begun for people under 65 years old. And you also probably know that family members, students, researchers who got a visa are still not allowed to enter Japan since more than a year. So I would like to know what you have to say to these people to make them in favor of Olympics. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we need to reassure the Japanese population that when we're speaking about safe games, we walk the talk. And there we can really prove that the protocols that are being established are such that everyone coming to Japan will not present a risk to the host. And that was very important for us, and that's why already at the publication of Playbook version 1, we insisted upon the transparency and making all the protocols and rules transparent and available publicly. Because it's normal. In any country today, you are concerned by the situation. We are here in Switzerland. And I can tell you that also people have a lot of concern, including when it comes to sporting events and public gathering. So we felt the first thing was to demonstrate that we're going to come with a population that has been tested and followed extremely rigorous protocol. When it comes to the situation in Japan, the one thing that is extremely clear is that the Japanese government is doing its utmost efforts to do the two things, which is on one hand to deal with a situation, including introducing a number of measures to deal with the situation that they are facing currently, and at the same time organizing the games in those circumstances, but making sure the games are not necessarily privileged over the situation in Japan, but rather that the two can be conducted in parallel fashion. So we hope and trust that these efforts will pay, and that we will have, at the same time, the conditions which do improve indeed for the population in Japan, and at the same time ensuring what we are all committed to do, which is to deliver very safe games.
西村さんIOC の質問なんですけど、これ日本のことについてのご質問でもあるので、私も一言だけお話をしたいと思います。非常に我々の抱えている悩みの本質的なところをついた質問だと思っています。で非常にですね、これコロナという共通の病気に対することですけれども、やっぱり世界でそれぞれ抱えている状況が異なります。で例えば緊急事態宣言という言葉一つをとってもですね、それはもうステート・オブ・エマージャンシーというと、ものすごくもうロックダウンで一人もいないんじゃないかというようなことをイメージする国もありますし、確かにそれがそう言ってる国もあります。ただ西村さん通り、日本も今緊急事態宣言ということでやはり感染をできるだけ抑えるようにやっていくという必死の取り組みをしてますけれども、ただその措置の中身というのはちょっと他の国とは違って、人はですね日中は活動、できるだけリモートとは言いながらも街に姿いますし、夜は一方でいないと。でそういったその言葉とか文化も含めて違うことをきちんとお伝えしなくてはいけないと思っています。でまた、このコロナの措置を一つとってもですね、非常に難しいんですね。すごくストレートに申し上げると、やっぱり我々日本の都民の方に向かっては、これだけ安全な措置を取るから、これだけ厳しい措置を取るから安全なんですよってことを言って、で安全安心を確保して大会をなんとか実現したいという思いを持ってますし、一方でこれを同じ言葉を海外の方が聞くと、そこまで厳しくして大会っていうのはできるんだろうかっていうような思い考えを抱く方もあると思います。したがって同じ言葉で説明したとしても、日本の国内で感じるメッセージと海外から日本を見るメッセージが変わってしまうところはなかなか難しいんですけれども、ただオリンピック・パラリンピックがその国内のイベントではなくて206カ国という世界中の国が参加するやはり多様性のあるイベントである以上、これは乗り越えなくてはいけないと思っています。したがって今日この場というのは非常に大きな場だと思っています。日本のホスト国であるマスコミの方が100人を超え、海外からのメディアも100人を超え、同じ言葉で IOC と日本の当局が説明すると。でこういう中で丁寧に説明することでですね、誤解がないようにそういうふうに進めていきたいというふうに思っています。ありがとうございました。
はい、じゃあ部屋の中あと質問ある方、原田さんだけでいいですかね。じゃあ原田さん行った後オンラインできるだけ行きたいと思います。
東京新聞の原田と申します。IOC の方に質問です。プレイブックに盛り込まれた対策を実行するには多くの医療資源が必要です。日本ではパンデミックの中ですでに、医療従事者やベッドの数が足りていないと指摘されています。そういう状況の中で、医療資源をオリンピックに取られることに対して国民とか医療現場から批判の声も出ています。そういう状況下で五輪を開催することは本当に正しいのでしょうか。
Well, I am certain that Hide, you would add to this. Maybe one technicality, but it has its importance. I've insisted quite a lot on the testing and how important the testing will be, because indeed this is quite a lot of tests to be conducted. But there, Tokyo 2020 has made clear that to alleviate the pressure on the system, the medical system, that is, we will have tests which are saliva-based. And this is a super good practical measures because it's much easier than some of the, don't quote me, but nasopharyngeal tests that you have to have almost like a medical procedure. So in that case, the saliva is really helpful because it allows to ensure everyone can go through the rigorous testing, but at the same time, it requires no medical personnel outside of some supervision. So this is really a good solution. Then when it comes to the rest of the resources, I think it would be more fitting that you, Hide, would comment on the situation in this respect, if I may hand the floor to you.
はい、ありがとうございます。今、原田さんから質問あった点は、非常にですね、重たくかつ重大な論点であります。非常に多くの方が関心を持ちご心配をいただいております。でやはりまずはですね、先ほどステート・オブ・エマージェンシーと申し上げましたけれども、日本全体、東京として、できるだけ感染を抑えるということで、医療の現場が逼迫しないような状態に持っていくというのは、これはまず第一だと思っています。でその上で、大会をやる以上ですね、その医療のリソースが全くいらないということはありませんので、何がしかは必要ですが、それをいかに他の地元の他の方が受けるところへのプレッシャーにならないようにするかということで、今、クリストフが言ったように、検査のやり方もございますし、また今回、検査の頻度をかなり増やしております。プレイブックのバージョン1ではアスリートについては、最低4日に一遍ということでございましたが、原則毎日と、でこれはこれでそのリソースをどうするのかという、また完璧な100% 非の打ちどころないことはないんですけれども、やはり我々は検査をきちんとやるということで、これは変異株というですね、新たな状態が生じたことに加えて、やはり検査をこまめにやることで、クラスターが生じる頻度というのは劇的に下がります。でこれは最初に言ったように WHO のアドバイスも IOC を通じていただきました。到着後とにかくその最初の4日間、到着した日も含めて4日間やることで、かなり外から持ち込まれるウイルスは少なくなりますし、その後もアスリートは毎日やると。でそういうことを通じることで、本当に一番いけないのはクラスターが生じてしまって、そこにものすごく多くの医療リソースを使わなきゃいけなくて、その結果、非常に多くのその負担を与える、これをなくすために、できるだけ多く検査をして、安全な大会で、安全な形で大会を行い、かつ、地元のその医療リソースへの負担を、かけないという形を今回お示しをしました。でその下で、状況がどう変わるかを含めてご意見をいただきながら準備を進めていきたいというふうに考えています。
はい、ありがとうございます。それではオンラインの方できるだけ取っていきたいと思います。I think I want to look into the questions through online, trying to address very quickly. The first question was made by Sports Business. Concerning about the spectators' capacity, and I believe this question was already addressed by President Hashimoto earlier. We will decide the spectators' capacity in line with the government's guidance concerning the spectators' capacity in sporting events. So I would like to skip that. The next question seems to be not very clear, and so allow me to skip that one as well. The next one, I think this question should go to the IOC. Simon from the Washington Post. Can you confirm there are currently no plans to give PCR tests to volunteers, and how do you justify this?
Yes, thank you, Masa. So I think I mentioned it earlier briefly, but the deciding factor for the level of testing is not so much if they are volunteers or officials or professionals or contractors, is really the nature of the role and their proximity to athletes. So the work we are doing right now with Tokyo 2020 is really to understand from within all of the group of stakeholders we have, which are the ones, even within the same organization, which are closer to the athletes or not. And that will drive the decision ultimately to test daily as well, or every so days, in accordance with the level of proximity they have. So I don't believe the playbook indicates that volunteers would not be tested. It's very much based on the nature of their role.
Thank you, Pierre, for the answer. And then the next question、次の質問ですが、これ、中村さんに答えいただいた方がいいかもしれません。大会関係者のアクレディテーションに関してですが、もう少し情報がないでしょうか。一体最終的にその何枚のアクレディテーションが、カットされるようなことになるでしょうかという質問ですが。
これはメディアの方がメディアのアクレディのことを聞かれているのか、あるいは一般的なことを聞いているのか、そこはよく分かりませんけれども、まだですね、アクレディテーション、最終的に何枚というところはまだ固まっておりません。まさにこのプレイブックを見てですね、判断される方もいらっしゃいますでしょうし、我々の方もよりですね、精査をする必要があろうかと思っています。ただいずれにしても5者協議でもこれはテーマになりましたけれども、やはり今までの大会と違ってアクレディを持っている方というのは、とにかく大会運営にエッセンシャルに必要な方に限定してスリムな形でやっていこうと、これは理念としては関係者一致しております。
Hide, could I add on this one, because the thing to understand is that it's still a fluid situation in the sense that the IOC, based on also a request from Tokyo 2020 and the government, we have decided already to ban a number of categories. Okay, so of course the decision was made on spectators, but we also said that all the accompanying guests would not be coming, and we're speaking about thousands of people, and other categories which will not be offered the possibility to come to Tokyo. So that already reduces the number quite a lot. But what is interesting is that considering the operation in Tokyo, many of the entities, being media organization for that matter, and you would know that, but also the IOC and others, we're looking into how can we assume some of the operations which would not require a role in Tokyo, can we still trim down, not the operations itself, it has to be the same, the number of people that are essential to deliver is the same, and I would say even more here, because the operation will be complex with the COVID-19 countermeasures. But can some of the role be assumed in Switzerland or elsewhere around the globe? And everyone is going through this, because again, the sign that the Japanese government has given to us is really clear. We have to minimize the number of people entering in Japan, and we respect that. So this work is ongoing. We already had a number of percentage points, and you wouldn't want to quote me here, but a substantial reduction has already been achieved, and everybody is looking into how to assume operations from outside. So this is work ongoing, and we'll see the results in a matter of weeks now.
Thank you. And the next question made by, again, sports business is concerning about venue capacity. So the same answer will be applied. We will skip that one. The next one from the beIN Sports question is concerning about the participants' commitment and spirit of following the rules and guidance, and also penalties. And I think the series of these questions were also already addressed by Christophe earlier, so allow us to skip that one. The next one can be answered by Pierre, perhaps. Will a positive test automatically mean an athlete isn't allowed to compete for the rest of the games?
Yeah, thank you, Masa. Yes, if the confirmation test, which is a nasal swab PCR, is positive, yes, it would mean that you would not be allowed to compete, because you would have gone through 3 tests showing that you are positive. So there would be no doubt that you could be contagious. So you would be then going through the medical procedure to ensure you are safe and others are safe as well.
Thank you. The next question was made by Yuki-san from Yomiuri Shimbun. I think the part of the question was already addressed, but the question is going to Christophe. Could you give us the outline? What would happen if we get positive results? Any lessons learned from the Australian Open experience? Are you confident that Playbook can withstand further threats from mutated strains, such as what we see in India?
On the first answer, Pierre, you covered, but I'd like to build upon the question, the specific question regarding the Australian Open. What we've learned all from Australian Open, and this is what we're going to do in the next month, is that the situation can be fluid and dynamic, including during the events. And when we were speaking about operational readiness, question was asked about what happens if someone witnesses something. This is exactly what we're going to do in the next month. It's to train the teams to respond to various scenarios and situations. And we've learned, again, from the Australian Open, and we did appreciate the comment that was made as well by the CEO. And by the way, we had followed up with the Australian Open, more precisely those who helped them into implementing some of the measures. So dynamic, one, be prepared, second, and these are very important lessons from the Australian Open and other events. When it comes to the playbook, I said it before and will repeat it. Playbook version 2 is the one preceding version 3. And I also said that the context being in Japan or elsewhere around the globe can evolve. And what I can tell you is that the playbook, when it comes to its final shape and form, will reflect the status of what is needed, considering the health circumstances at that point in time. And let it be clear, if it takes for some of the measures to be even more restrictive than today, so they shall be. Version 3 is when we have the final response to the situation in Japan and around the globe.
Thank you. There seems to be the questions made by sports business seems to be overlapping pretty much everything, so I'd like to skip these. Simon's question from the Washington Post. Again, this is concerning, sorry, this was already addressed by Christophe earlier when Harada-san made the same question, so I'd like to skip that one. A question from CNN. I think the first one was already addressed, but I think the second one should be clarified. All Olympic participants waived from the 14-day quarantine when they arrive in Japan. I think he needs a clear clarification. I think Pierre.
Yes, thank you, Masa. So one of the element part of the playbook is that every participant will have to document an activity plan, which basically lists all of the activities this person will be carrying out in the first 14 days. It's a document that is allowing people to say the venues they intend to go to and the nature of their work. And on the basis of this plan being submitted in time and the government having reviewed those documents, the quarantine, which is legally the regulation today in Japan, will be adapted to allow for the participants to do what they have to do, including during the first 14 days that they are on site.
Yeah, thank you. I think the next one should be the last one. Liam from the Inside the Games. For Christophe, what are the current plans for false positives and what happens if or when they occur during the games?
Thank you, Liam, and for the purpose of having proper medical explanation, we have Dr. Pao Mota with us. So he will respond to this. Thank you, Liam. Pao?
Thank you, Christophe. Managing false positive, as Hide said at the beginning of the conference, is going to be done by experts. We are setting up an expert group with Tokyo 2020 and the IOC to manage all cases, and we should make sure that there is no one who is excluded from competition having a false positive. Thank you.
Liam, Pierre will add as well. Pierre? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Pao. And going back to the sequence we defined, the objective of the sequence of testing we have built, and this has been done in collaboration with a group of specialists working with WHO and us to assess what is the best possible sequence to, of course, ultimately reduce the number of cases, but also to limit to the maximum the number of false positives, because we understand that this is a very complex matter. We don't want to distract too much the attention of any participant from what they are doing. So we are really looking to, through the sequence we're implementing, to minimize the number of false positives.
Thank you very much. I think the next one, question from Reuters concerning about the public sentiment. So it was already addressed by us earlier when Nishimura-san made a similar question. So I'd like to skip that. The last question on the online is concerning about the credentials. So this is something we would be able to address when we have the online tailored briefing to each stakeholder. We have a briefing to broadcasters, also press, next week, I believe. So if you would be able to particularly have these kind of questions, you need to work with your colleagues who is in charge of Tokyo 2020 to see the clear answer on that. So I think that's pretty much everything. 大丈夫ですか？最後一言よろしいですか？ So thank you very much all. 本当に皆様そういう時間ありがとうございました。Back to you, Robert. You want to conclude the press conference?
Thank you, Masa, and thank you to Christophe, Pierre, and Craig for joining from afar. And just to repeat what Masa said, thank you to Hidemasa and all of you for staying up so late in Japan for attending this press briefing. We hope it was helpful. So have a good night, and I will hopefully see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Christophe, Pierre, Craig. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I'm back to sleep.
じゃあすみません、本当に部屋の中の皆さんも遅くまでお疲れ様でした。ありがとうございました。
いい質問ですね。CLO っていうのは今回のこの一つのポイントで、決して専門家である必要はありません。それはもうドクターとかあれですけれども、ちゃんと自分のそのチーム所属している組織の人がちゃんと体調管理をしてますとかね、そういうことをちゃんとで変なとこ行ってませんとか、行動管理の責任者、情報をまとめる人で、あと我々のコンタクトパーソンになります。はい。ですね、それは、おそらくですね、NOC とかの、CLO は多分そういう方になると思います。